Thank you for joining me for this episode. Today, we're going to be speaking about the power of letting go, transitioning from daily micromanaging to practice and industry leadership with Dr. Aaron Werner on the OI Show. Well, thanks again for joining us for this episode. I'm stoked to have my friend Aaron Werner on the podcast, buddy. It's good to have you. How are you, man?
It's great to be here. I'm happy that I finally got the invite to join Dave Kading.
Well, you've been crushing it with your own podcast. I'm so
Wow.
excited to see just over the it's been 2, 3 years that you've been doing your show?
I think about 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard just how much you're crushing it. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your podcast, and then we'll get into your practice a little bit later on, but why don't you share with us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Aaron Werner podcast on iCode Media. Chris Wolf was kind enough to invite me to have a show on the iCode Media channel. And really, it look, if you'd have asked me 5 years ago if I was going to be a podcaster, I would have laughed at your face. Um, I certainly did have no desire to do this. I didn't do any broadcasting courses. Uh, it just kind of fell in my lap and realized that I have a lot of fun conversations with different people, and everybody's got a cool story to share. And it became a neat way to just share a lot of those stories. I'll be honest, Dave. I get more out of it, I think, than anybody else. So
I know.
selfishly, I love having the conversations. And a side benefit is my kids now when they Google my name or their friends Google me, it pops up and it embarrasses the hell out of them that their dad is a podcaster.
Oh,
So
that's hilarious.
I'll
That's
continue it just
hilarious.
for that.
There you go. Yeah, when we started our podcast, as I've told this story before, it was, I said to Dr. Brujic, and I said, Mila, how often do we have a conversation? And we're like, oh man, so many other people would love to hear that
Yeah.
information. And if nobody else listens, at least we learn something and we get
Oh
something
yeah.
for somebody. And ours was because of COVID, we never got to talk to our friends anymore because we weren't at shows or at meetings. And so it just kind of evolved into that. And you've got a pretty big role within Vision Source. And so
Mhm.
you already have a platform to be talking to a lot of different people. Why don't you share a little bit about your Vision Source role and that just automatically gives you podcast guests already, and you know everybody in the industry from doctors to industry people, so it
Yep.
just opens up a great space for you.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I've been blessed to just have a lot of connections kind of built in. But I'll take two steps back. My history is I'm a fifth generation optometrist. I grew up in the back of grandpa's practice in LA, being yelled at because I'd stack all the little boxes we get back from the lab and then knocking them down. Um, and then dad went to optometry school. So he graduated when I was 7 years old. So I grew up running around um, SCCO's campus, and I was the test dummy because I didn't mind having light shine in my eyes and whatnot. Joined dad, started getting involved with Envision Source, became an administrator, one of the doctor leaders, and then I think just because I volunteer too much and have an opinion and a strong work ethic, they said, "Fine, if you're going to have an idea, you go do it." So hired me. I oversee all the education and Vision Source now, along with my good friend Tammy Franklin, which keeps me incredibly busy. I still own the practice in San Diego with my business partner. We bought a couple other practices, merged them into to ours. I still see patients. Try to do it a day a week, and then really just have fun understanding what our practices need all across the country and developing programs and curriculum to address those, and then finding the hidden talent. I remember the first time you and I lectured, right? I was nervous as all could be because I'm sharing the stage with the Dave Kading, and but just trying to find the young up and coming talent and giving them a platform to hone their skills and let the world know who they are.
Yeah, yeah. So you practiced with your dad before he retired. For how many years but did you practice together?
Well, we still practice. I bought him out about 10 years ago. So he's an optometrist through and through, which means he'll die with a retinoscope in his hand.
There you go.
No, we practiced together. I graduated in '08.
Yeah.
I think we were together for, trying to do the math quick, 8, 9 years before I bought the whole practice, and but
Right?
he still sees patients 3 days a week, and loves the fact that he gets to just see patients, and the plumbing issues, the HR issues, everything else falls on my shoulders now.
He's
Uh,
retiring, and it's
he
easy because all he'd have to do is see patients.
oh,
Isn't
he
that
loves it.
great?
Yeah,
And knowing your dad, he loves people, and it's the optometry is easy in some ways for him because he's just like, this is what he's done forever. It's
oh, he
awesome.
loves it. That was part of the
Yeah,
buyout is he had to, as long as he was physically and mentally capable, he would still be able to see patients. So
very cool.
that was
Very
neat.
awesome. Yeah. So you practiced for, 10, 15 years, and became owner of the practice, full owner.
Hmm.
You were managing and overseeing the practice. Clinically, you were involved on an everyday basis.
Yep.
Tell me about like kind of this transition out of full-time patient care and into an industry role. Was it like a cut in a piece of paper? Like one day you were like 5 patients 6 days a week, and then the next week you were 1 day a week? How did that transition happen for you?
Yep. So when I first became, it was slow, but quickly accelerated to where it is now. So when I became a Vision Source administrator, I said to do this job appropriately, I need to dedicate a day a week. So I stepped out of patient care a day a week, um, and backfilled myself with an associate, and still had a very strong grasp on the practice because I was there 4 days. And then as I got more and more involved with Vision Source, I backed out, and then really went to a day a week seeing patients pretty quickly. And I'm going to pretend nobody's listening. It's just the Dave and Aaron confessional. Um, I was incredibly panicked because nobody could run this place as well as I could. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody could do what I could do. And I wouldn't have called myself a micromanager, although in hindsight I was. And I was amazed because the less I was in practice, the better we did. So I had to look myself in the mirror and rationalize that.
It's tough
Um,
to say.
that was tough until I realized that it was because I was such a good leader, right? That my leadership abilities were expounding. And what really is the truth is that my team was just being a little bit overshadowed when I was there, and when I stepped out of the way and let them spread their wings, they did some pretty cool things, and it grew and blossomed and expanded, and so it's really our success is all of them, and my job has become just to support them and what they're doing. But that was a tough transition going from being in control to letting go of control.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your practice is an incredible practice, and it didn't get there because somebody wasn't watching and taking close, eye and protection on things.
Yep.
So that brings up some real big questions is how do you go about this transition
Mhm.
of, so many of our colleagues are retiring the day they quit and they get rid of their practice, and it's just like this long haul, and it is just so tough. But the real opportunity for you is you can stay an owner, you can be involved in the practice, but
Yep.
you're not the reason your practice is successful anymore. And I think so many practitioners fail to make that transition at a time in their life. So, what are some of the things that you learned in that journey that you were holding on to that maybe you needed to pass off and maybe could have done sooner?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing was the ego, right? And I believe this is a carryover from optometry school when at least my professors in the clinic, they would challenge you on what size of cup to disc ratio was. And if I said a 3 and they thought it was a 3.5, that would have been an issue for the rest of the day. So the need to always be exactly right. And and not being okay to ask for help and just saying I don't know. So I think the first thing for me was when I found mentors beyond my dad because he was easy to talk to, but Mick Kling or you or some of the others in our Vision Source group, what I could call and say, I'm getting my butt kicked this month. Like, just help me see what's happening, help me understand. And instead of them coming and telling me exactly what to do, they would ask questions, and it helped me understand how to look through at the business through a different lens, some other insights. I realized they've struggled as well and asked me questions, and that none of us really has this completely figured out. And the minute you do, something big is going to happen. So you always are learning and growing. But getting rid of the ego, having mentors, and then really appreciating the value of metrics
Yeah.
and numbers, not in a sense of just, this is our daily goal, but how they all work together. And I think the where I'm at now, and hopefully this is a good place to be, but kind of like if I'm managing a football game, right? You want to win the game, and the end goal is to have more points than your opponent at the end of the game. But every play, there's a different goal, right? Am I getting 1 yard? Am I just not losing a yard? Am I trying to reposition myself on the field, right? Am I slow walking it down to keep our offense on the field and tire their defense out, or vice versa, right? What's the goal of what we're doing? Um, and then so understanding our numbers and metrics in the office has really helped me give a lot of freedom to the team that we have now, by giving them guidance and giving them, goals, but letting them figure out how to get there.
What so I think as a practicing OD who's seeing patients 5 days a week, and I
Mhm.
I I struggle with this because I don't see patients 5 days a week either. It seemed like there were numbers that were important to me that I was monitoring, and it was almost a reflection
Yep.
of me. What do you think are the different numbers that as an owner who may not be seeing patients every day that are more important now, and like you're able to get the practice pulse of what's
Mhm.
happening, and maybe the number of refractions isn't the same as it was last month, but maybe the revenue or whatever
Yep.
that number is higher, so you're like, okay, we're still doing well, or this number went down even though this other number went up, and that means we need to intervene somewhere. Do you have any of those numbers that are important to you?
Well, a bunch of them. I mean, my spreadsheet is stupid big and long, but what I think the biggest thing is it went from a daily number or a weekly number to really now I look at trends over 3 to 4 month time periods, and stepping back from when it was reflection of me. You said it perfectly. When the numbers felt like a reflection of me, there was a strong emotional component. And so if the number wasn't good, I defaulted immediately to justification as to why. It was the patient's fault, it was the government's fault, it was tax season, it was Christmas season, right? It was rainy, it was too hot, or whatever the case was. It was never my fault because I allowed it to be a reflection of me. When I stepped back and looked at an aggregate of the numbers, and then I looked at a bigger time frame, so I got rid of the peaks and valleys and I could really see the trends. It helped making clear decisions and not rash decisions that, quite frankly, often had more negative consequences. When I was trying to solve a problem quickly, I created two more.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it totally does. One of the big shifts in the ownership of my practice that shifted me away from the monthly number or the weekly number was the trending 12 numbers, because we're
Hmm.
so caught up on what do we do for the year,
Yep.
but that trending 12 is what have we done for the past 12 years, and if the number is still pointing up, it means we're growing.
Yep.
If now it's going down, it means that the reflection of the last couple of months have been bad, as opposed to just like this number that goes up and down month to month. And really, you don't know because maybe last year it was a bad month during that same month. And by looking at that trailing 12,
Yep.
which is just taking the average or graphing out whatever that number is. I track it for myopia management. I track it for our revenue per patient or revenue per exam, those sort of things. And I too have way too many numbers that I probably look at. But the real one for me is that revenue per encounter that we
Hmm.
have. And that tells me if we're providing good care to our patients, because we have high revenue opportunities in our office,
Yep.
like dry eye treatments, myopia management, and our optical sales and so forth. And so I know if patients are coming in and as a whole, the revenue per encounter is high, it means that for every time we see that patient, we're providing opportunities for them to move forward with good treatments. Now, we could have a run of a whole bunch of patients healthy and not needing anything, and that would
Yep.
reduce your revenue per encounter, but that tends to not happen as a whole over the course of a month to month time period. So I love that. And that tells me whether the team is doing a good job. If that number starts to go down, you know, Are our doctors presenting good options? Are we, reminding patients of these different things? Are we converting well into
Yeah.
myopia management? So that kind of is a good pulse number. And I like how you said it as well. And I think that's really, really critical. Now, was this a purposeful decision for you that you said, I want to look at my future and I want to reduce patient care? What am I going to do? Or was this just I was super involved in other things in optometry and I just couldn't say no, and then it just got to be too much and something had to give, and it was patient care?
No, I think that I think what it really was is I took a moment to figure out what my personal mission was. Like, what's
Mm,
Aaron Warner's purpose on this earth, at least professionally? Because in school, my purpose was to pass the next test, right, and get a good grade. And then my purpose was I got a bunch of student loans to pay back, and then I'm gonna get married, and I gotta come up with money to pay for a house, and right. So it was always chasing something, and I think it really was when I sat for a moment. And I don't sit, so I probably was hiking when it happened, but just what is my bigger goal? And for me, it was I find lots of satisfaction in helping others. And when I uh, this may sound bad, it may relate to others, but it when I'm in the exam room, I think I'm a really good doctor, and I'm helping one person every half hour, and so my impact is two patients an hour. And when I am doing what I'm doing with Vision Source and helping to build programs and whatnot, I mean, we just had a week of business optometry courses in Houston in our home office, and we had, 200 people representing 500 offices, right? My impact is so much bigger, and I'm not the lead presenter on most of these. I just make sure they happen. And so I'm looking and watching the presenters that I've supported help present, and I can see the satisfaction they're getting. I see the satisfaction of the room. I hear the impact that we have going out. And so personally for me, it just became an impact issue, right? I want to impact as many people as I can and support as many people as I can. And so I find greater value in that. Now
yeah,
it's tough because I love being in patient care too, and I had to
yeah,
balance the two of them. Um, but for me, it created more personal satisfaction, and I think I'm fulfilling my purpose doing it that way. On the flip side, my dad looks at me and says, "I don't know how you do that. I just here's where I want to be." Right? I love making those personal connections with patients. Every 30 minutes. So each of us is different, and there's not a right or
yeah,
wrong. I just think you got to find what your purpose is, and then drive towards that.
yeah. I think you and I were in a room where we both came upon our purpose at a similar time point at one point with a program where we were really like sitting down and having to be like, what is our purpose on this earth and where is that really dedicated? I remember those moments with both you and me where we
Yeah.
came to that. And, for my wife, she likes that personal connection, right? She enjoys like making that connection with a person, whereas I look at the aggregate as well
Yeah.
of a bunch of different people and how can I help them impact their patients? And that's why I love educating. And
Yeah.
here's what I learned, and here's where I made the mistake, and being able to
Yeah.
share those with people. And I make a lot of mistakes, so I get to educate a lot of people on what not to do. And so it
Yeah.
works out
Well, that's the
really
definition
well.
of an expert, right? Somebody
That's
who's made
right.
more mistakes than you have.
That's right. Exactly. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, well, cool. What would you give as some suggestions for people, both in transitioning of their practice as well as looking at the next chapter, right? So many of us wait till the last page of a chapter before we
Yep.
turn the page, and that's too late, right? So what
Way
would
too
you
late.
kind of make some suggestions as people are looking at their practice transition, but also where do I get involved more and do other things if that's something they want to do? And speaking of your dad, right? He did
Yeah.
that too. He made that transition,
Hmm.
and now he's doing the next chapter, which is perfect for him.
He's doing the next chapter. He loves it, and he gets to really shine doing what he's doing because he was good at business, but he didn't love it. And so when he didn't have to do that anymore, his training one on one with our team members went up. Right, the stuff that he got to do, the personal relationships went up. I think the first part is really figuring out your why. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to get more involved in? And then look at the roadmap towards it. And instead of being afraid of the change, and sometimes as a practice owner, it's fearful. Mick Kling quotes a colleague that says, the thing about optometry private practice is you're 1 month away from bankruptcy. The what if monster scares us sometimes. Where I've learned to really enjoy the companion of the what if monster, because the what if monster creates a lot of good opportunities, not just bad ones. And so,
Sure.
what if I had the time to get more involved in the AOA or my state association? What if I had the time to go on more mission trips, or write a book, or do a podcast, do different things. So I think really just embracing that what if monster, um, and then kind of road mapping what that looks like. If you like numbers and you like solving puzzles, your example of your metric was fantastic. One of the ones we track as well, the revenue per patient encounter. Although what's interesting is as you learn how they relate together, we had a huge jump in our revenue per patient, and the team was excited. And I said, "This was too much too quickly. I'm getting a little nervous. I'm afraid next year our capture rate's going to drop because a lot of that bump came from the optical." And we were selling a lot of really high end stuff. And the patient said, "Well, I just spent $1,500, 2,000 with you last year. I'm not going to buy another one. This is still great." So our 12 months later, our capture rate dropped a little bit. So learning how those relationships kind of work is it's a fun puzzle, at least for me.
Yeah.
So if you're, if you like that kind of, puzzle solving, then, you go into that and maybe you help others and consult. But I think really it's identifying who you are, and, and what you want and what makes you happy and what's your purpose. And then, like I said, just having fun with that what if monster on paper, on how do I get to that point? What do I need to do? And then taking the steps to do it, having a support group, a friend group that you can ask questions on and that'll challenge you back, that supports you to get to that stage. But I would certainly think at least 5 to 10 years out, because you don't want to wake up, like you said, and say, "I'm retiring now. What do I do?" Right?
Yeah.
Do I sell? Do I not sell? Is the practice at a point that I want to sell? Am I going to get as much money out of it as I can? Um, and then what's next for me? Because you don't want to hang up the shingles and then, now what do you do? Right? Because we're here to have a purpose,
Yeah.
whether you're religious or not. I think that we're all here to have an impact, and if we don't know what that impact is, it's kind of a scary place to be.
That's awesome, man. I know I could talk to you forever. Any
Yeah.
last thoughts?
What's really interesting, that the other thing that I would bring up is, I was not a reader. I'm well past high school now, so I can admit to my English teachers in high school that I never read a book. Um, Spark Notes were fantastic, and Cliff Notes.
Hmm.
But uh, with Kyle Clutie and Brianna Rue, they've got me into reading lots of different books. We have a book club. We're
Yep.
reading Beyond Entrepreneurship by Jim Collins and Bill Lazare right now. And what you talked about, that accidents don't happen, he addresses in there, and like being prepared and all the work that you come in. And it's really easy for somebody on the outside to say, "Well, the stars just lined up perfectly for you." What they didn't see was all the work that you did to be prepared for that moment. But that typically the stars don't magically just line up, right? There's a lot of planning and work involved. But when they do, it's a magical moment, and
Yeah.
it makes all that work and effort worthwhile. So I think reading has also opened my eyes a whole lot in the last couple of years, is to just all the cool information that's out there.
Mhm. I don't even have to read anymore. We just need to watch you and Kyle and Brianna, and you guys break down all the books for us. So it's been really good, which I
Wow.
encourage people to check out. Awesome, man. Where can people find out more of what's going on in you with you and your podcasts and so forth? iCode Media, right? Your
Yep, iCode
podcast there in
Media.
Warner.
Yep, EYECODE. So iCode Media. And then yeah, Chris Wolf has his show on Mondays. Mine's are on Wednesdays, and then once a month, Brianna and Kyle and I do a live book club, which is cool because people will jump on and send us messages and texts and whatnot. And I I would have never thought in a million years that we'd create a community around books, especially as someone who didn't read a single book. Um, but
Yeah.
it's really neat, just the insights and the thoughts. So yeah, I would love to have people join us and check it out. And Keep listening to just all the information, all the great storytellers within the profession, and you being one of those.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Well, this is awesome. I appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Optometric Insight Show. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out the Aaron Werner Show on iCode Media, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.